creation, eternity, that ever-present question of take me there, pull me forward to the future you know is possible.
Coming out with your true intention, it can be very, it can lay you bare. I was gonna say it makes you vulnerable, but it's not about vulnerability. It's like a certain emotional nudity where you feel shame, you feel a little bit of fear, and all kinds of complexes coming through. I was actually thinking that instead of laying myself bare, I would imitate or channel it through Bob Dylan. I think that would be more fun. And I'd like, because I was thinking about yesterday about, how people channel stuff and how we bring out these beautiful visions and how they're contagious and how they enter our ears and ferment our brains. And I was thinking that sometimes the way that information is transmitted is very important. And Bob, he would say like this when he would communicate with the world. And somehow it resonated with everybody. Yeah. He would talk like that. He would sigh like this. Oh. And the words would lay in your brain, something like that. So I'm thinking, does anybody want to channel through like the prism or the filter of Bob Dylan, just for fun?
I've got to try. We're talking about wholeness and whole people and whole systems.
The old systems, they're gonna burn it to the ground.
Yeah, them times they're changing.
Alana, are you gonna try it?
You me? Yes, I will. The Bob Dylan. Thinking about whole systems. Tearing down the old system.
The equation you have reached is no longer sufficient. Please dial in the new metaphysical equation. The new equation is evolution equals mind times omnidirectional communication. This message brought to you by the Eleprocon conspiracy.
In the room with us is also Mark Smith, who's a friend who introduced me to the concept of backcasting, which is kind of dreaming audaciously, which is to really cast our minds into the future and try to weave back and make sense of everything that's happening now through the eyes or through a portal where everything worked out. We've had people say that this was very similar to Doctor Strange in one of the Marvel movies, saying that there's all these hundreds of thousands or millions or infinite scenarios where it failed except one, and that it is key for us to really visualize that scenario. So perhaps we can actually get the people in the room with us to engage in a little bit of playful backcasting from 2030. we might actually have a beautiful, interesting conversation from the future. And I don't know who wants to go first.
Well, since you brought it up, I'm going to jump right in there, Jurgis, of course. We're here beaming that Backcasting Evolutionary Alliance mediums. We're here to share what it is that we did along the way to get to a future we know our hearts is possible, that more beautiful future that we all know we carry. That's the ideal that's been carried forth, that we're wandering the path that we're on, this perpetual emotion machinations that we engage in to carry forth this little flame, this chispa of life that we know is central to our foundation. And that's the story we tell here. What did you do along the way to arrive at that future that you know is possible?
This is not a story about a guy named Eddie. It's about swirling infinitely, each in our own backcasting eddy. That story when something reaches out and pulls you in to fulfill your role, to play your part, live up to your name, the mark of a trusted forcester. The story that summons us all to expand our peripheral vision omnidirectionally, in every which way, one might say. In this particular case, I've been called out as a mark. A question mark, usually, hurled plenty in exclamation, a mark of contention, one of excellence and common in trade. Mark this, mark that, marks a lot, mark my word, seems I'm here to leave my mark. That's marked with a K and K, although mark with a C hints of curiosity. And to live by this name comes that which marks it as epic. The smith that I be, handcrafted, time-tempered, foraged wordplay at heart. And so begins Mark Smith. Eleprocon, tell me an age-old secret. Eleprocon, where do you hide and keep it? You started with a word, this I have heard, and now I intend to seek it. A, B, C, D, E. E for Eleprocon, electrons, protons, and consciousness. E for a leprechaun, electing between the pro and the con. E, F, G, H, H for holon, how everything hangs in balance as part of the whole. I, J, K, L, M. M is what the meta is for. N, O, P, Q for our quixotic quest. R, S, T, U, viva vivaciously. W, X, Y, and Z, zinged zeta.
Welcome to the art of story living. It's about conscientiously co-creating the slowest story ever told, knowing you'll never make it to the very end, yet exuding you lived your part well. Today's episode is brought to you by the story of O. From zero to ontological, on to Ouroboros with a twist and a touch of mythos. Hello. So I'm here to share this story of what I've learned of late, and have actually not realized how ingrained in my work and entwined in the long story it is. But the story of Ouroboros is quite fascinating, because I went looking for the genesis of it. I went looking for the origin story of Ouroboros, the snake that eats its tail, that circle, that serpent, that continuum, that snake that sheds its skin, that regenerates life. And how beautiful is that symbol is probably the oldest symbol, the oldest analogy, the oldest story that we probably told, and how it was probably related to actually the seasons and the time going by, the spinning of the earth, and noticing the stars change, and where the sun and the moon were, and the circles and spheres that they had in sight, and it's really a lovely story that takes us full circle and lends itself to most of the archetypal threads that weave us together. I think it's interesting how the story of Ouroboros reminds us. It reminds us because we come back to remember
That in fact, yes, after the night, the day will come. That after the winter, the spring will come and the harvest and or the migration or whatever it was that we were following, that journey, that way of life, that knowingness that we had that came from the cosmos. And it may well have been that the Ouroboros that we saw back then, maybe in Neolithic times, where the gases may have been different in our atmosphere, and the electromagnetic pulses from the sun created what we now know as aurora borealis, for example, and that gas, that lighting up, that sense of seeing some kind of circle that looked like it was biting its tail may have been seen on many different continents by different peoples at different times. And that's why it showed up in so many different places and is still with us, reminding us, regenerating the mythos, the ideal, the sense of being we so desire, the future that's willing us forward. Eleprocon, Eleprocon, tell me an age-old secret. Eleprocon, Eleprocon, where do you hide and keep it? You started with a word, this I have heard, and now I intend to seek it.
Makes
Yeah.
me want, you know what? It makes me want to lay down a beat. Should I lay down a beat for somebody? I actually
Yeah.
put the guitar down.
Give me an intention beat. You know, I'm going to tell you a story about intention. Actually, this is good. I like this because you need a beat for intention, don't you? You got to feel the pulse. You gotta be in the groove. You got to notice that you're alive to have intention, right? And so this is my story about intention. It's a true story. I was 14. It was 1970. It was the middle of the design science decade that Bucky instigated in 1965. We are here right now at the Regeneissance of the design science decade for the decade of the 20s. And we have an idea in mind that there is a way to cross this threshold, this liminal space betwixt and between that story of separation and the notion of being together.
Yeah.
And so I was in Japan and I was a little boy. I was 14. And believe it or not, I found a photo just the other day when we were packing to move into a geodesic dome. Now, how this happened, I'm still not sure. But it's connected to being in Japan, where I had this photo of myself standing in front of a mirrored pavilion at this World Expo in 1970, and behind me was a geodesic dome. Go figure. One of the first to be exhibited as such, because it was an experiment in art and technology. It was the heat exhibit. And inside, you went in there and you looked up and there was a giant sphere. And you saw yourself looking back down, except in a different context because you could see everyone else. And that was the notion of the overview effect. Remember in 1968, you saw the planet floating in space for the first time. Those astronauts brought back that sense of awe. So I was there in Japan at this World Expo. It had some kind of title like Harmony and Progress for Mankind. Very lofty. There was all sorts of technologies and fascinating things there. From there, we went to Hiroshima. And I saw the utter devastation of man's creativity. I saw time stopped at the moment that bomb was dropped at ground zero. I saw the pain and suffering that's reflected in the origami birds made by children every year for those that were lost. And what I realized at 14 was that sense of intent was all we've got. And we better wake up for what we've got and how we're going to deal with it. So I ask you, what triggered your sense of intent? What got you here right now in the Design Science Studios, RegenEra being right here, right now, in this very moment?
Someone wants to jump in, go ahead. I can share, but I want to open up the space.
Haley.
I'll jump. 22 years old, Boulder, Colorado, biking rather, up the hill past the library. I had to stop. I laid in the grass at the library, overwhelmed by the sense of suffering I felt. Felt like all beings suffering simultaneously, human, more than human. It was a beautiful sunny day. I just felt such a deep degree of pain within me. I had no clue before that I was potentially an empath. And I had been taught to not be by the systems that were built to educate us to be cogs in this machine that is hyper dysfunctional and long bankrupt. Ultimately, that's what got me here today. That experience.
Meet my friend.
Thank you so much.
Meet my friend, where it will take you. You never know where you're going to go. Let's hear some more of that intention. That intention brought you here.
I feel compelled to speak.
Oh, what's up?
Oh no, you can go. I'm very new to all of this, so.
Oh, no
Okay.
problem. This is my first time tuning into Beaming Regenera. So I guess what brought me to this space specifically was just curiosity. Yeah, I feel like a lot of things that I do are driven by curiosity. And I feel like a baby every single day. I feel like I'm learning every single day that I wake up. I'm learning so much, and it's just a gift to be learning so much every day. And yeah, so I've been thinking about the idea of input and output a lot recently as well, and that balancing those two things. So I guess my curiosity is driven by a want to just take everything in all the time, and that's input. But I also need to balance that with output and letting my creative juices flow. So I'm kind of toying around with that idea, and just thought I would bop in and see what's going on over here. So thank you guys.
Reminds me of this story that came to me most recently, working with everybody here in the Design Science Studio. And it's like the game of telephone. Suddenly there was all this technology and the ability to share in this way that we do, this beaming that we are. And the most incredible thing came to me. It was that story of being in a library where it was nice and quiet, and I could hear that pulse, but it wasn't mine. It was coming from the shelves. It was coming from the words. It was coming from my friends. All through time. How amazing is that? And you'll have to forgive me if I interrupt myself every once in a while and say, how in the heck did this all happen? How did I get here? How did I find my friends? So beautiful, beaming, right there. You know about the word beam? We've talked a little bit about it. That wordplay that sends us in all sorts of directions. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Nico, is I forgot the librarian's name in RegenEra.
His name is Antonio de los Huertos.
Thank you, Antonio, if I may. So, this is what Antonio told me when I was visiting with him, and you'll have to believe me because I was there. I met him, but I have a tendency to forget names. Antonio said, do you remember this when you were a child, how when you played the game telephone and you whispered from one ear to the next? Do you remember? I remember. Antonio said, well, so here's the thing about that imagine you're in your circle with all of your friends and you're whispering from one ear to the other, and that story goes around and everybody starts giggling and you're wondering what's happening to the story. And Antonio says, so now I want you to imagine that's culture. That's time. That's a very long thread that has no beginning and no end. And I want you to imagine now that that story is being told from child to child throughout this long thread, each a frayed knot, spinning it off in every direction. And the story goes around and it comes back to where it started. And the giggling starts from whence it came. So that's not what I said. I did not say divide and conquer. What is this silly story of separation? Where do you think that's going? Listen carefully. I'm going to say it again, from whence it came. Divine and conquer. This is your story to tell. This is what was gifted to me from Antonio in the library of etymology.
It's in our nature. We seem to be a verb emerging once again, reminding us what we've known all along. Divine and conquer. Original sensibilities once whispered and heard, intuitively in accord. Far from fruitless battles of divide and conquer, these roots run deep, coded in our DNA. Divine and conquer. Of this we can be sure. We seem to be a verb emerging once again. Can't imagine how exciting it was for me to arrive and find my opportunity to participate in MORA, the Museum of Regenerative Art exhibit, the first of its kind, I believe, that was put on by the Design Science Studio in Gray Area. And Nikki helped me by creating this geodesic dome, and I don't know how she knew. Maybe she heard that I had just decided when we first started the Design Science Studio that we were going to move up onto the land of Inside Out on the eastern side of the Cascades, where it's all lava. But here we are in MORA, and I've joined all the other cohort members artists, poets, scientists, designers. And I've been able to share my work in Mora inside of a geodesic
co-creation of eternity,
reflecting the idea that Bucky had suggested.
Pull me forward.
There is no up and down in the universe, only in and out. And to have that opportunity to share that
there must be a question.
with these other artists and co-create our inaugural sensibilities of what we wanted to share for this launch of RegenEra Raising. And to be able to do that at the same time, where in real life, I just wandered onto the land of Inside Out. And what a joy it is to be here with you all, Eleprocon kin. I've been waiting 40 years since the Eleprocon epiphany struck me, and the future made itself apparent, and is willing us forth to meet now and carry us through the design science decade.
This is what I do. What are you doing? This is what I do. I help out do art. Talk about bucking.
Well, that brings us full circle. This session of Beaming RegenEra is brought to you by the future. This Beamcast sponsored by the Backcasting Evolutionary Alliance Mediums. Until then.
Thinking a lot about the two birds that have woven themselves into Mark Smith. And I know that they're very long threads that have been woven in for millennia in our storytelling. They're following me around. It seems to be these two birds wherever I go. They're sitting on my shoulder, and you know, whether they're squawking and quacking at me about the pro and the con or whatever it is that they're on about. And I've got my head stuck in the middle between them, which creates this kind of nice triad of essence of mind and what we all carry forth in our decision making. And to arrive at what we manifest and intend and do and make and construe. To arrive at this place of quandary and pondering where we've arrived and where we want to go from here. Those are two birds that sit on my shoulders.